Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shane's Rummage Sale. I mean, ask Shane anything. As you can see behind me, the leak in our closet has still not been fixed. It's been 2 weeks. We have great landlords. We don't. It's awful. We've been living like this now for 2 weeks, waiting for them to fix the water leak in our closet, and they still haven't fixed it. They're making up some lame excuse about they can't get a part for it. Anyway. Hopefully the next time I do an episode of this show, it won't look like this. Now, the other thing, too, is I'm doing 2 episodes in a row, well, 2 weeks in a row of Ask Shane Anything, and that's because I'm working on a bunch of stuff for you guys for Hellblade 2, and I just didn't have time to do anything else today, and in fact, this episode is going to be shorter than usual. There's only 3 questions, and they're kind of shorter ones, but I want to get something out to you guys because there wasn't a Pactor Factor yesterday, and that's because Pactor wasn't around and we're ready to shoot new episodes. We'll be asking for new questions for Pactor Factor, I believe, beginning on Monday. The embargo for Hellblade 2, by the way, is like in the middle of the night on Tuesday, early morning. So probably like normal time for people in Europe, but for people in America, it's going to be overnight, basically. But I'll have a bunch of content for you guys around Hellblade. Fortunate enough to get review code early for that. I've been playing it. Not going to tell you how I feel about it right now at all. So anyway, a shorter episode today, but hopefully you appreciate it, and hopefully you appreciate the coverage of Hellblade that we have coming up for you guys here in the very near future. Let's get to your awesome questions. First up, we have a question from Norris Nexi, and I put out a call for new people to ask questions, and you guys came through. Thanks, Norris Nexi. Shane, I am in the market to buy a new PC, so I was thinking about getting a gaming PC. I have never built or owned a gaming PC before. I would like your advice on some of the best ones to buy or build. What are your recommendations or advice that you have for a new gaming PC shopper? Perfect timing, Norris Nexi. I am in the process of, I'm not really building a new PC. I'm upgrading my current PC, but I'm basically completely rebuilding it at the same time. Really, the only thing I'm going to keep is the case. And actually, let me get my, I'm going to put my reading glasses on because I've been doing shopping for parts, and I have an Amazon wish list full of it right now, and I've been going through it. Again, the timing for this is perfect. So the first thing I would say is you need to figure out how big of a PC you want to build. I always build ATX mid-case or mid-size cases. They're like your typical sized PC that you've come to know and love throughout the years. I don't build like crazy powerful PCs. If you want to build something like a monster, then you need the big ATX case. I'm building the next one down, mid-level, and I think that's probably right for you based upon kind of the way you phrased your question. It doesn't sound like you have a lot of experience. Now, I'll just say this actually before we get going here. You might just want to just buy a gaming PC. And some of the best deals, honestly, I know it's hard to believe, but if you go to like Costco or Walmart, like they actually have decent gaming PCs for like cheap, for like $1,300. Like you won't be able to play everything in 4K, but everything will look really awesome at 1080p and probably play most stuff at 2K at decent frame rates. So anyway, if you want to avoid all the hassle and you don't want to learn how to build a PC, the first thing I would say is just buy a pre-built. And again, Costco, Walmart, places like that are selling gaming PCs, and they're actually like really good deals right now. For me personally, I am rebuilding my PC. I'm getting a new motherboard. And the reason I'm getting a new motherboard is because motherboards only work with certain CPUs. So you know, you need a motherboard, a CPU, a GPU, and RAM, and a case. And that's pretty much the basics of building a PC. So anyway, I talked about the case. I'm going to get a mid-level ATX case, or actually just reuse the one that I have, because I have a really awesome Corsair case. It's just very nondescript black. So I'm just going to reuse that, but I'm getting a new motherboard, and that's because I need to upgrade my CPU. And you have to really be careful when you buy motherboards to make sure that that motherboard will work with whatever CPU you're going to buy or any CPU that you have. For me, my CPU has been the big bottleneck for me. As far as not being able to play recent games, some of them won't even start because of my CPU. So I'm getting a new CPU. I'm getting a new motherboard. The other thing, too, with my motherboard, I want to make sure that it has USB-C, because right now, all I have is USB 3.0. That's the highest level of USB I have on my current rig. So I want to make sure that the motherboard has that as well, and that's something else you need to keep in mind when you're buying a motherboard. And right now, the motherboard that I'm looking at getting is an MSI Mag B760 Tomahawk Wi-Fi DDR4. That's a really long title. But it supports 12th, 13th, and 14th gen Intel processors, DDR4 RAM, and obviously I want to upgrade there. It's USB 3.2, Gen 2. It's Wi-Fi 6E. It has Bluetooth. It has pretty much everything. It has a lot of stuff that my current motherboard does not have, and you can get that not too bad for about $178. And again, I've spent a lot of time pricing this stuff. I've already done a lot of the legwork for you. I am not building a monster rig. I am building like a rig that will run 1080p games amazingly, 2K games pretty well, like 60 to 80 frames per second, and then 4K games full on, probably 30 to 40 frames per second roughly. I'm not building like a crazy PC. I'm trying to be budget conscious here. So anyway, that's my motherboard. As far as and what everyone wants to know is like, what GPU am I getting? So right now I have a GTX 1080 and it's not cutting it anymore. So I don't want to spend more than like $500 on a graphics card. Even that to me is insane. Like normally I like to spend like $200 or $300 on a graphics card. In years past, that would get you like a mid-range graphics card. That's not the case anymore. Now to get a mid-range graphics card, you got to spend $400 or $500. And so that's the budget that I'm looking at here. And basically what I've settled on is a 4060 Ti, a GTX 4060 Ti. I've been waffling back and forth. I've been looking at like the 3060 Ti. What's really important to keep in mind here when you're buying these graphics cards is the VRAM. So look at how many gigabytes each of the cards have. And so I want to make sure that I get either a 12 or a 16 gigabyte card. And in that range, you know, I can afford basically 40, 70. There's one you can find those for about $550. And then my other option is the 4060 Ti, and that's at $439.99 right now. So I think I am going to get the 4060 Ti. $430 is a little bit over what I want to spend on a graphics card, but you just can't get a decent graphics card for less than that. So that's what I'm going for. I'm going to get, 16 gigs of RAM to put in it. And the CPU I'm looking at, I've been going back and forth on that a little bit. But what I've settled on is an Intel i5 13400F processor. It has 10 cores. And right now, I have like an i5, I think it's a 4670K or something. Back when I built this PC I'm using now, it was like the gaming CPU to get. Now, it's so old it won't even run games anymore, which is crazy. So anyway, I am going with that Intel i5 with the 10 cores, with the 16 gigs of RAM, with the 4060 Ti, and the MSI Mag B760 Tomahawk motherboard. And with that, I'm probably going to spend, let me add it up real quickly, like 200 plus the 4060 I, 650. I'm going to spend about $1,000. And that's with reusing my case. Now, pretty much it will be rebuilt. I'm also reusing my power supply because I already have a power supply plenty powerful enough to power that graphics card. So I'm reusing a lot of stuff. I'm still spending $1,000, but in the end, I think I'll have a decent rig that'll run most games pretty dang well. Not all at 4K native, but also, more importantly, I hate to say it, is to be able to use it for work. To be able to render videos and all that kind of stuff way more quickly than I'm doing it now. So, a PC for me, I use it for gaming and I use it for work, way more for work. So, the gaming is nice, but I already have two pretty powerful consoles, and so I only play PC games on my PC when they're only for PC usually. So anyway, there you go. That's what I recommend if you're looking to build yourself a PC that isn't going to break the bank. Once again, a question from a new person. We have a question from Gino Mike 1. Shane, hope all is well. Comedies. Would love to hear you discuss your favorites. Have you ever seen comedy live? My personal top 3 are Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, and Jim Gaffigan. My favorite comedies are My Cousin Vinny, Dumb and Dumber, and Step Brothers. Okay, well, first of all, Gino Mike, I think those are some pretty good choices. I wouldn't argue against any of those comedies or any of those comedians. To answer your question, I have gone to see comedy a ton. And a lot of that is because when I first got to LA, a lot of my friends were doing stand-up. Two of the writers, who used to be the writers for X-Play, Guy Branum and Blair Butler, both of those two would go out and do stand-up. And we would, a lot of times as a crew, the X-Play crew, we would go out and support them and watch them. One thing you realize if you go to see a lot of comedians is that they do the same routine every time. I didn't know that until I got to LA and I started going out to seeing a lot of stand-up. Even in Philly, I would go and see stand-up, though. There was a comedy club on South Street at like 2nd and South that we used to all go to. I think it was called like the Laugh Factory. I can't remember. we would go there all the time. And now that I moved to LA, I was going to things all the time here. And again, like, you go see your friends and they tell the same jokes every time. And it's not just like my friends. Like, that's what comedians do. They work on their routine. And then they record, their special once every 3 years that have all those jokes that they've told a million times, and they've got really good at telling the jokes. That's how comedians work. I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I only realized it because I know them and I learned about it moving to LA. So I have seen tons of comedians. My favorites, I'm probably older than you, so I'm going to go back to like Richard Pryor. I hate to admit it, but the first comedian I really liked was Bill Cosby, because he would just tell great stories. Like, he had all these stories about when he was a kid in his neighborhood. Like, the first comedy routines I remember are almost all his. He was also clean back then, so I could listen to it. My parents wouldn't be like, oh my gosh. And then as I got older, I started listening to like Richard Pryor. And Richard Pryor was far more ribald than than a lot of the other comedians I was listening to at the time. And then another comedy special I remember that I really got into was Adam Sandler when I was in college. He had that whole routine that everybody knew almost by heart. It was like, they're all going to laugh at you. And then, all his iconic songs. That was a big deal when I was in college. And let's see. I don't know. I could go on and on. I like the guys that you mentioned too. Dave Chappelle. I think he's great. Lately, I feel like some of his stuff gets a little boring. I feel like he's lost the ability to cut some of his weaker jokes from some of his routines. I felt like there wasn't a lot of filler in his older routines. I feel like there's a little bit of that now. But I guess right now I would say my favorite comedian is this guy named Sebastian, and I can't even ever say his name right, Maniscalco or something. The funny part is that my wife discovered him first, and she was a huge fan of him, and then she started turning me on to his routines, and he is just really, really funny. In fact, we went to see him last year for my wife's birthday. I bought tickets for me and her sister. Her sister came out here, and we went and saw him. And it was all the way out in the middle of nowhere at this like Indian casino in the middle of the desert in California. But anyway, we went there, and he was incredible. Literally, I'm not exaggerating, I laughed for 90 minutes straight. Every joke he told made me laugh out loud. And not just me, the entire crowd. He killed it. 90 minutes straight. I literally laughed so hard I was in pain when I walked out of there. And everybody was. Like, he is really, really good. And he's been around for a long time. I don't know why I didn't discover him until now. But go watch some of his, especially his like first 2 Netflix specials that he did. They kill. He is funny AF. He does a lot of family comedy, situational comedy. He's Italian, and I come from an Italian family, so maybe I resonate with that a little bit, more than maybe everyone else does. But he's blowing up right now. He's like in all these movies and everything. Like, I'm not the only one who loves him. Again, I would highly recommend going and watching his first 2 Netflix specials. They are great, and I understand a lot of people have probably told you to go watch some Netflix comedy special, and then you watched it, and you were like, this is terrible. I've been there. I'm telling you, you'll love it. Go check it out. Now, as far as movies are concerned, oh man, where do I start? The Jerk with Steve Martin is one of my all-time favorite comedies. The scene where he's leaving his house and he's like picking up just the one thing that he needs, that scene still kills me. There's an old Peter Sellers film called The Party, and it is literally just about him going to a party as this awkward dude and just trying to mingle with all these rich people. It is freaking hilarious. I know you may have never heard of it. You can probably watch it for free somewhere. It's called The Party with Peter Sellers. I love it. All the films that you mentioned, I also love all those as well. Like, that whole era of comedies I really liked. Old School is one of my favorite ones. In fact, I remember the first night the first weekend that I moved out to San Francisco and I started working at GameSpot. We worked like the week, and then the first Friday got there, and all the guys at GameSpot were like, hey, there's this new kid Shane working with us. Let's take him out and see what he's about. And so we went out and we got drunk, like really drunk. And we had a blast. It was amazing. We ended up at somebody's apartment in San Francisco, and they put on Old School to start watching it or whatever, and everybody passed out. And I just remember laying there on a couch all night hearing the menu screen from Old School, and I think it was that song, Hey Now, You're an All-Star, and it just kept looping all night, and nobody would get up and go turn it off. So I love that film until then. And then what else? Tommy Boy, I think, is a really good one. The funny part was, when I went to see Tommy Boy, I hated it. I went to see it in the theater, and I literally hated it. I fell asleep, and I walked out of the film. And then I watched it like 3 years later on VHS or whatever, and it was hilarious. And I was like, what was wrong with me? I think it goes to show you how your mindset makes such a difference in everything you're doing. Like, if you're positive, like, it changes how you perceive things. Same thing with going to see films and stuff like that. And I was so wrong about that movie, and I'm embarrassed by that. So anyway, those are some of my favorites. All right, our last question for this episode comes from Urban Twister. What would you do if someone donated $1 million to Sifted, assuming you wouldn't just run off and enjoy yourself? If I win big on the lottery, I'll consider it. Haha. That's a great question, Urban Twister. I appreciate that. And believe me, I've been waiting for a long time for investors willing to invest in Sifted with, hopefully actually more money than that. You really need a lot more than that to create a successful website. So what would I do with it? Well, the first thing I would do is I'd hire some people, first off. Like, I'd get Vincent back in curating. I'd probably go and try to hire a lot of the old people that worked with me on game trailers, honestly, because a lot of them don't have jobs in the industry right now, and they're amazing. People just don't want to pay more than $30,000 a year for video game editors. So I would hire some of them. I would maybe pick up a couple of the Easy Allies guys, maybe that fell off, that haven't worked out because, their money's kind of gone down a little bit. So first thing I would do is staff up, because that will change my life immediately. And then once we get people staffed up, I would buy gear. I would buy a brand new TriCaster that works in 4K. Not even just works in 4K, but like 1080p 60 at least. Like, our TriCaster currently is only 1080p 30. And that's why most of our like game face is 1080p 30, blah, blah, blah. So I'd like to improve the production values. And plus, the new TriCasters just do so much more stuff than mine does right now. So I would do that. I would get a location, obviously. I'd get a studio again. So we'd have, a place to shoot a bunch of stuff. Because right now I only have a place to shoot game face. And then, obviously, I'd shoot a lot of stuff here in Shane Rummage Sale. So I'd get a space, and then I'd start investing in the site. I'd start building out new channels. I'd start a sports channel, I'd start a politics channel, start an entertainment channel, and make Sifted what it was supposed to be all along, which is a network that's hand-curated, and you get all the stuff that you care about in one feed. All the stuff you care about, games and entertainment and all of it. Obviously, that was how we were going to scale Sifted if we had some significant investment. So I start really just trying to turn Sifted into what it was supposed to be all along. And I'll say this, $1 million doesn't go very far. All right, that's it for this episode of Ask Shane Anything. Again, apologies for no episode of Pactor Factor yesterday. And again, look out for a call for questions for Pactor Factor probably on Monday. We shoot on Wednesday of next week, so that'll get going real soon. Also, keep an eye out for our coverage of Hellblade 2. That's going up again late on Monday night, early Tuesday morning, depending on your perspective. And we'll have a bunch of stuff for you guys to check out there. And then obviously we'll be back with Game Face on Tuesday with Matt, where we will announce what we're doing for Not E3 2024. Just locked all that stuff down. There's all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes, people. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks to everybody who pledges $7 or more per month. You guys are the ones that make this show happen. So thank you. And if you are at that $4 tier and you want to support this show, maybe consider bumping it up to that $7. We'd appreciate it very, very much. So have yourselves a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.